Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Reaper Nation podcast. I am your host, Rosalind Perkins, and today we have a great show. Give me a second. Let me see if everything's live. All right, everything is legit. Uh, Give me a second, everybody. I apologize. There's like so much stuff going on right now. Mm. Exploring the dark truth behind the freedmen of the civilized five civilized tribes. The reason why I want to have I want to have that conversation is because it's more of a research. Um, eh, I don't usually do a lot of research. When I do it, I actually do research. And if you know about the five civilized tribes, you figure out it was five tribes from the south. Most of those people in the south were black indigenous, mixed in with other groups. But me, I do have a theory. Give me a second. My theory has always been that there has always been black natives in America because there were black people everywhere, from Asia to Africa to Europe to South America. Well, if they were in those other places, why wouldn't there be in North and South America? For the last, I can say 6 7 years, a lot of people have been doing research and have been finding Afrocentric, if we want to say, or Negro feature fossils. I personally do research and take it serious. But the question I want to know is why haven't the red natives spoken up? If they were supposedly were the first one here, why haven't they said, okay, yeah, there were Afrocentric people? What's going on? I'm in red. Salute, salute. The reason what the reason I say these questions because we're gonna jump into these videos and stuff. We're gonna break down research. You know, Dorsey. I know Dorsey wants to say something because Dorsey is a Choctaw. He's from the Choctaw Nation. Um, the real question is why haven't the Siberian Indians said anything? You know, in the in the if I was a betting man, I would think because they weren't the first ones here. I'm not saying that they don't have claim to America, but at the end of the day, being something that you're not, it could rub people a little bit differently, So that's why on Monday we will be talking about were Black Americans the first Native Americans, And I wouldn't say, and I'm gonna say this: the Red Indian, the Siberian Indians, they still are or can probably be considered Black American because they were intermarrying with Black natives, taking on the culture as Black natives. So I wouldn't even say that, but at the end of the day, we can't lie and say, okay, you know what? They were the only ones here. Um, like I said, this is kind of new to me. I was writing down a few things and stuff. And the first thing I want to write, I'm just going to give you the details of the Five Civilized Tribes. The Five Civilized Tribes are Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw. I apologize, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Creek and Seminoles. Those are the five. Those are the considered the five civilized tribes. The real question we want to figure out: who were they? Were they Siberians? Were they African, or also known as Moors? Because if we were going to be really honest, the black race migrated everywhere, left their inventions, antiques everywhere. This is why we're figuring it out that there were the first samurai was black. So it's I want to also throw out there, and this is just for y'all. Why did the red natives didn't defend the black Americans, even though we were intermarried with them, even though some of them, and this is why I said the five civilized tribes can be considered certain Indians, you know, nailing to the knee, signing treaties, you know, and this can also go into the Walter Plecker scenario. There's the Walter Plecker and the Dawes bill, I think it's called the Dawes bill. If anybody knows the Dawes bill, it was kind of like the reclassification of Indians, but it was like, okay, going on race and what do you see? The person was darker, they would be considered a Negro or colored. If a person was a fair skinned red color, they would be considered a Native American. So these are the things that you should also dig in and understand what is going on. What are we seeing? Give me a second. What is behind the freedmen of the five civilized tribes? Why didn't the red natives come back for them? Why didn't they come back for them? You know, they had a great. I'm gonna put it this way: sometimes when you have a great thing coming and running, sometimes things come to an end. You know, that's why, like, when I hear red natives say, "Oh yeah, go out, go back to your land," this, and that. At the end of the day, the real question is, whose land is it? Whose land is really it is? You know, give me a second. Take this off. Yeah, whose land really it is? I personally said it's the red and black natives. But the real thing is, I never hear the natives talk. They always say that it's their land. They always give us a blend. They always give us an answer that really doesn't match up to what they are saying. You know, as I said, I personally do think it's their land. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, they were sharing this land with somebody. Why are we finding Negro featured people? Why are we finding the oldest fossil has Negro features? Why are there black antiques? Yes, there were Africans there because they were doing import and export with us. I have been saying that ever since I started this show. They've been doing import and export with with Africans, even though they were in Africa at the time. They were all tribes, you know. So give me a second, everybody. I have to open up another window. And I'm sorry, everybody. I came on time, but it's just, you know, I'm still trying to get stuff together. But yeah, who were these people? You know, that's the real question. Who were these people? Why haven't they made the big impact like Black Americans made this impact? You know, and why are they dying off? They got reparations, but why are they dying off? Why aren't they using their reparation for the best of youth? Why in early 2000 they kicked Black Americans out of the nations? These are the questions that are asked. Why are Black Americans now are getting the light of saying like, yo, we are native to this land. We are the oldest people that were on this land. Why are they saying that now? There's a reason why a lot of Black Americans are saying that. Is it true? Is it not true? Were we not listening? As I always tell people all the time, you can be whoever you want to be, but the truth will always reveal who it really is or what it is. I'm gonna say this. While I was growing up, I have seen and I have joked around with people who always say, "Yeah, I am native. I am Cherokee. Look at my hair. I'm Cherokee." You know, that's what we heard a lot in Massachusetts. And we was like, you ain't no fucking Native American. You're an African. You know, sometimes laughing about somebody, it might be true. You'd be like, damn, why did I laugh? They were actually telling the truth. They were actually really telling the truth. Mm, that's my juice. Jesus Christ. Got the coffee right here. But yeah, that was the truth, what they were telling us. You know, and sometimes once you say, yeah, I was wrong for doing that, things get a little bit better. Things will get a little bit easier and you could defend the truth. Say, yeah, I was the same one who I was just like you when I laughed at the person that said that they were Indian or say that they were Native American. Then when you will start asking a question about Walter Plecker and the reclassifications, they'd be like, oh, it was only in Virginia. What's going on, La La Brown? Then you'd be like, oh, well, there were natives and there were dark skinned, fair skinned, black American natives in Florida. Oh, that wasn't true. Those were the Spaniards. It was called the Black Seminole War. Oh, those weren't the. Those aren't what you're thinking about. That's not true. There's always a excuse of these people not being black. Hey, Lala, but when I'm asked, this the real question is, why can't the natives be black? Why do black Americans only have to come from slave ships? What are these people really scared of? Because now I'm starting to think that Native Americans are scared too. I'm starting to think that the Native Americans are scared too. So the real question is what they're scared of. That's the real question. What are they scared of? Why can't they tell the truth saying that there were black indigenous on here too? Why is there's always some type of cracks to figure out like, hold on, that doesn't make no sense. If they're reclassifying Indians, who are they reclassifying these people to? That's the real question. If they're saying that there were fair skinned colored people in Florida, why can't we say those were Africans or black black Indians? The funniest thing that's really serious is I heard Sarnetta say like, "Oh yeah, these black people out here are pretendians. They're pretendians out here." And he was doing a documentary on himself, not really a documentary, but he was recording himself, and he was saying, "Yeah, ask my family. I'm not native. I'm not native to this land." And they're like, "What? Yes, you are." What? No, I'm not. I'm not no Indian. I'm African. Like, no, you got Native American blood. You're a black indigenous from New York. He said, "Nah, that can't be true." You know, this man went back on his show and told everybody, like, yo, I gotta say it. I'm native to New York. I have to say that. I'm a Native American to his New York. He said, I got proof. My family was telling me the history of my family being in New York. I didn't come from no slave ship. Look how many Pan Africans turned on Sonetta because of that. Look how the natives didn't say, oh, yeah, you know what? That is true. There were black natives here. We were all intermarried with each other. Only thing we knew about natives is that they had slaves too. That's the truth. That's what they told us. And they were genocided off. But now the real question is, I'm gonna say this: if a lot of these natives were genocide, why are there more? Why there was only 400,000 Africans from Africa that made it to America? We can even do a half a million, but there's 50 million Black Americans. There were 10 million that went to Brazil, and there's only 70 million Brazilians, Afro Brazilians. That's telling you something. That's actually telling you something. There's something that somebody's leaving out. If it like put it this way, if there was already 10 to 13 million that went to Brazil and there's 70 million now, and there's only 400,000 black Americans, I mean Africans that went to America, that's already telling you that there was somebody already over here in America. Where are these fair skinned people coming from? Why is there 50 million black Americans here and there was only 400,000 that came to America, that made it to America? Like if it was even that much. I think it was a little bit lower. I think it was under the 300 to 280, 280,000. The Siberian Huskies were the first dynasty swapped. Yeah, you might be right, Miss Lala Brown. You might be right. And I, my issue with these Native Americans now, and it's not that I hate them. It's that they're not saying anything. They know something, but they're not saying anything. They want to be the first ones on here, even though they got to land. They're damn near Mongolians. If you want to be honest, I think they're Mongolians. They're damn near Mongolians. Like, why? Let me ask you a question. Why do Black Americans have to be from Africa? Then, when we ask you what part of Africa we're from, we can't really get a real name. I believe the Africans that did come came willingly, and that was a way to confuse us. Um, I'm gonna give you pushback. I don't think they came willingly, but I think their own people sold them. They sold them, and the reason why I'm asking, why do you think them Africans in West Africa, like Ghana and Senegal, be doing them theatrics about Africans being sold? All that crime falling on the floor and shit like that. Nigga got the women got the fucking the fucking color purple hair, the silly hair. Like, it's crazy. They're mocking us. But Africa knows a lot of those people didn't come from Africa. But the lie is a little bit more sweeter than the truth. It's a little bit more sweeter than the truth. And I'm gonna say this. I personally believe there was Africans that made it to America already, but they were doing import and export with black natives. Some stayed, some left. I do believe that. You know, I told you the natives and the Mexicans are the same people. That's why the government uses natives and interchangeable because they know. Yes, the Seminoles. You're right, the Seminoles. I do agree with that. It is the Seminoles. 10 more minutes and we're going to start the show. So we're going to start at the 40, 45 minutes. We might give an extra 5 minutes, but yeah. Then when we start, this is where I say, you know what, these shows that we do when Black Americans stay on code and when we start giving out informations and we're passing the informations on, it's great. You know, people always, one thing about Black Americans, it's not about who's the first ones to say it. It's what the informations that we're all giving out is what makes it a little bit more better. That's why they look at us as a shock dot, and it's not nothing about that. It's about the information that we're giving our other brethrens, or even if you're from a different race, something that you can think about by like, oh well, let me do research on this. Maybe he might be right. Maybe he might be wrong. You know. First, this nigga bronze. His grandma was some pretending. Uh, Pretendian. No, my grandma, my not my grandmother, my great grandmother. Yeah, she was native. But let me ask you a question, Black Snow Bunny King. With all this information and all this education you have, like why? Like why do you even care? You know? What do you have to prove? That's the real question. What do you have to prove? If this and this is why I like the Reaper Nation show. If you have some type of information, give me the information. Why not give me the information? You know, and I could put the information up, and we can revise it. See if what you're saying is true. We see what you're saying is true. This is crazy. Give me a second, everybody. Yada 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 yada. There's so much stuff I have to go through. And if somebody sent me some emails, I apologize, man. It has been a long week. But yeah, yeah. Like if I'm wrong, Snow Bunny King, give me the information so we can look it up. This is the Reaper Nation. This isn't the Bronze Reaper podcast. This is the Reaper Nation. Give me the information to prove that I'm wrong, please. You know, because if not, if you can't give me no information, you're just a joke. You know. Yeah, he does. you know. Give me a second. Give me a second, everybody. I apologize. Mm-hmm. Mm. All right, I'm gonna have to call these people later. Mm. But yeah, yeah, give me the information. Black Snow Bunny. Black Snow Bunny, can you act like I treat you different, any different from any others? Like that's one thing that I hate about you is that you think I treat you different. Do I joke around with you? Absolutely, I joke around with you. I joke around with everybody. But at the end of the day, give me information so like my nigga, you are a part of this show, right? I'm asking the question, like, are you really a part of this show, or are you just here to just, just kill time? Like, and I get it, you just here to kill time, but like, give me some type of information, you know? Because what I know, and this is what I do believe, I believe the whole South, it had to be an Indian nation, Indian tribes, all of that before Europeans came from Ellis Island. There was already black natives here. Like how do black Americans know to get to the north? How do they know how to maneuver through everything? How do they know the woods more better than the European? If they were brought here what in the 18 1700s, how do they know how to get through those woods? How do they know to run away? Those are the questions that I'm asking, you know? But to answer your question, can you think both of those what you said can be right at the same time? You know, being native and a freedman. There were black Indians, right? The Indians weren't considered black. They were considered what? If they ran away, they were freedmen. Was it freedmen Indians? They were reclassified, right? The Indian removal, the reclassification by Walter Plecker and Dawes. Yes. There's a reason why a lot of these black Americans are saying this. And I'm gonna say this, Black Snow Bunny. Is everybody native? I don't know. Like, is everybody black? Let me ask you a question, Snow Bunny King. Why is it so easy for you to think a white man can be a native Indian instead of a black American? If a white man was telling you, yeah, I'm Native American by lineage, my great grandfather was Native American, you would believe him, Snow Bunny King. But when a black American say, yo, I have lineage of Native Americans, but you'll be like, oh, but you don't look like it. Why do you have to look like something that you're not? I mean, why do you have to look like something to be something? There, look at Edward E. Hoover. A lot of people wouldn't expect E. Hoover to be half black. He looked like a white man. He was an eggplant sucker, but he was still a half black man or a biracial or whatever you want to call it. Why is that a problem, Snow Bunny King? And I'm gonna say this: I actually like the word freedman. You know, I know a lot of Europeans ain't gonna like it because it brings back what you did to Black Americans. It brings back the torture, the savagery, the thuggery shit that you have done. A lot of people don't want to bring that up because at the end of the day, it's hard. It's tough to chew in the 2026 to know that your whole family or your whole race of your whole bloodline is vicious. Until this day, you still haven't learned. You're still doing vicious shit. You know, say this. I know a lot of people want to hide stuff under the small hats and stuff like that. And this is why I always tell people all the time. I consider the small hats the realest white people, the real white people. I think they're the real white people. They use your people to do their dirty work, as you say. Do I agree what they do? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, you let them. If there's less than 5 million of them in America, what and there's what over what 60, 70 million European white Europeans and American or Ellis Island babies or Ellis Island offsprings in America, why are you letting these people who are less than 5 million destroy your community, your world, your country? I'm not telling you to go out and crash out, but at the end of the day, if you have seen Black Americans achieve, you have seen Black Americans turn nothing into something, why can't you do the same thing? And the answer is because you're not Black Americans. If we ever notice, the European always has help, they always profit off of people, they always need some type of color person's component or idea or blueprint of everything. If it's violence, they can do that shit themselves. They can. And I'm gonna say this: shout out to the good white folks. You know, because you know what? They never stop. They don't stop fighting. They don't stop. They stop complaining and say, "Yo, I'm gonna do what I have to do. Fuck it." That's just how life is. But I'm gonna make the best of it. Unlike these other crime motherfuckers eating mayonnaise sandwiches, smoking meth. Y'all just complain about everything. Life is never fair. Life hasn't been fair for a black man or a black natives for generations. But it's your own people that kills you, that destroys you. You know, and let's get into the videos now. I was waiting for Dorsey to come up here because I know he wanted to say some stuff. Matter of fact, let's call Dorsey. Y'all want to call Dorsey? Let's call Dorsey. Uh,
What's up, Bron?
what's
What's
going
happening
on,
with you,
Dorsey?
pimpin'?
What's going on, Dorsey? I'm on live right now. I'm on live right now. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Why
What's
haven't
going on? I'll hop on there.
I'm on there now? Hold on one second. Is that shit calling twice? Oh, that's my TV. All right. Why hasn't that red natives defend black natives?
The reason why is because long ago they made treaties with the white man where they compromised our freedom and our land. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When the Redskins decided that they were going to make a deal, the U.S. government made treaties with them. Okay.
Mm.
Later on, after the Civil War, the United States reneged on those treaties also because they told them that we wouldn't come beyond the Appalachian Mountains. That's what they told the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and all that.
Mm.
But then when they moved them in the Trail of Tears, they then moved into what is called the Mississippi Valley area, and then the Mississippi River was the only boundary that separated the United States government from the actual redskin nations. You see
Mm.
where I'm coming from? Which
Yeah.
we call the plain Indians, the buffalo hunting Indians. So then when they came in contact with the black soldiers, they recognized them. They was like, oh shit,
Mm.
it's the buffalo soldiers. It's the woolly hair, the ones that's the legends that our ancestors fought with hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago when they first got here. The legends are true.
Mm.
You have to understand. They never, as much as they want to say that the Redskins were everywhere, they never crossed the Mississippi River because look at it. Even up in Illinois, the state of Illinois, they were dark skinned.
Mm.
So that means that the rivers were a barrier that they used as, let's say, like a moat. You see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
we know that the Chickasaw, the Aborigines who were here, we built fortifications, plateau castles.
Mm.
We built log fortifications, log houses where we was grouped in numbers like garrisons because we was a nation. So if you're a nation, that means you got soldiers, you got generals, you got so that's the reason why. So then when they sold us out, because we had asked them, let's go to war.
Mm.
Okay? So so look at the ones that came out of the Lakota. The Lakotas, the means that come out of South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa,
Mm.
everything west of the Mississippi. We wasn't messing with that because the climate was too harsh. It wasn't meant for us to be there.
Okay.
because we was like, hey man, we had woodlands. We was eating moose. We was eating caribou. We was eating deer. We was eating turkey. We were eating pheasant. We
Mm.
was eating everything that abundance, an abundance of wildlife and plant life. I mean, we was eating tomatoes, potatoes, everything.
Mm.
So we were living off the land. We cultivated that. We
Mm.
domesticated that.
So do you believe?
You know, and
Do you believe
huh?
that? Do you believe if the red natives say that Black Americans are Black Indians as well, we would figure out that they weren't really the first people here because they already
Well,
sold us
understand
out.
this.
Because they already sold us out, so we know they can't be
Okay,
trusted.
so understand this. I can only speak from my family history.
Hmm.
Okay, but I can also direct you to other people who family history align with ours. Like I said, we come from the Tougaloo band
Mm.
of the Choctaw Nation. See, it's broken down to bands, nations, all of the tribes. But when you with a smaller band, that's that family group. So it was a
Mm.
bunch of families and so forth, and you can just trace it through the history of the Tougaloo, the village of Tougaloo, outside of Jackson, Mississippi. Now it's Tougaloo University, and that Tougaloo University sits on the hunting grounds that they used to have over there.
Mm.
Because if you go on the campus, you'll see that the trees are spaced out, and you're like, "Damn, this is not wilderness.
Mm.
America was never wilderness. Do not let the motherfuckers tell you. See, when you imply wilderness, the first four letters is wild. Oh, this was wild. It wasn't there. Yeah, we built this shit. This shit was built before they got here.
Mm.
That's the reason. See, they apply these fucked up ass terms on us to brainwash us. Oh, it was nothing but wilderness. Well, nigga, where the fuck we was staying? Oh, we was just sleeping outside? We them big wigwams? We them big log houses?
Mm.
We didn't be, you see where I'm coming from? We didn't have buildings and structures. And then let's take it beyond that. Let's say the pyramids. Let's
Yep.
say the steps. You know, I mean, I don't really get into that Olmec shit because it wasn't my tribe. I don't give a fuck about what happened in Mexico. I only give a fuck
Mm.
about what happened in the Mississippi Valley
Miss
when we was
Miss
growing
Lala
corn and
Miss
hunting
Lala Brown
deer.
said
Huh?
something super dope. Miss Lala Brown said something super dope. She said those Seminoles in Florida some of them in Mexico are the same people.
Okay, that's the same. Hey, check this out. That's true. I can't. Why would see? That's the thing about it. If you're proud of who you are, you don't worry about the achievements of what other people did because you
No,
say,
no.
"Hey, right
The
on."
reason why I said that because don't forget the Black Seminole War, when they won the war, but they had to get removed out of that country, so they went two places. Some of them went to Oklahoma, and the other ones went to Mexico and fought in the Mexican War.
Right, right, right. But then but see, then that goes back to what you were saying before. Once they got to Mexico, they got discriminated against.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, you went from the fire. You went from the frying pan into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they showed no motherfucking remorse on dogging you out.
Do you think that was a
I,
tribalistic thing, or do you think it was a Because don't forget, these are
I
other
just think that the Judas, the Benedict Arnolds, the traitors in the motherfucking, just like in Africa, just like in America, just like in China, just like wherever,
Mm,
those there are people who think just on their own selfish. They don't think about the community. They don't think about family. They only think about their own selfish desires or what the Western civilization had to offer.
mm,
You see what I'm saying? I mean, we that continues today. I mean, understand this. Some people be like, "Well, Dorsey, you intermingle with, you interbreed with different cultures," and I say, "Yeah, because hey, check this out. I master that shit. If you don't know, if you don't understand that we the top of the motherfucking chart,
Hmm. I always tell people all the
why
time.
would
I
check this
always.
out? If I went to a smorgasbord, right? Why would
Mm,
I keep eating the cheapest shit when they have the prime beef right there in front of me too?
I would say this, Dorsey. You know how to you master your surroundings.
Yeah, I live in America, but bro,
No,
from a
the
historian,
reason why I say you master
huh?
your surroundings, when you master your surroundings, you can basically control you can control people of what they do, how they act, how to react, what just the whole just still the way how people move. Once people feel like they're winning, you already won the game because they're gonna get too comfortable.
Okay, look at it from a metaphysical type. The
Hey,
more you focus,
in 2 more minutes, because I got to start
okay,
the show.
the more you focus your effort on something, doesn't that bend the reality that you live around?
Mm,
If you don't focus on cleaning your motherfucking house, that shit stays motherfucking dirty.
mm.
And that's the reality of it, is it not?
Yeah, it's a
But
reality.
when you focus on cleaning that house and improving that house, boom, then you apply that towards your community. You focus on that shit. If everybody got together and focused on making their community a safe place for their kids,
Mm.
boom. Then if everybody in the communities all focus on doing it for a nation, y'all gotta focus. Shit, I focus on my life. Shit.
So I'll say this. We did do that at the time, but I feel like when you get infiltrated by like people from different cultures, that's when things can be a little bit tricky, especially when they don't want to, go with the system. If you're not
Okay, so
moving,
look at it this way.
if you're not moving with the system, it's going to be difficult. Go on.
Okay, so look at it this way. Let's look at the black. Let's look at our black political body, right?
Hmm.
And we look at the people who are ineffectual representatives. Look at them as sickle cell. So, and right now we are a strong, healthy body, but we got sickle cell cells inside our body, and we got to treat them motherfuckers and get them out of them.
Mm.
Because that's what the black caucus is, sickle cell. It's ineffectual. Everybody else is breathing hemoglobin. Like a motherfucker, they out there bringing it up. We the only ones that ain't being fueled properly by
Mm.
being provided with the resources so that we can run smoothly as a community.
Mm.
So, like I said,
30 more
um,
seconds, story. 30 more seconds.
I've been around. I mean, I've been around the world in the Marine Corps. But at the same time, the world been around me. I look how people look up to us as FBA.
Mm.
We are legends. We're legends in our own time,
Hmm.
and it's time we start living up to to our potential. Our kids are geniuses,
Facts.
and let's let them run free. We don't need to go to no white man college to get the same message out the books. The books is the same.
Yep.
Education at a HBCU is from the same damn books they have at the white colleges.
Hmm. Hey, yo, you want to
Okay,
hear?
so
You
that
want
I
to?
mean I'm finna
You want
land my
to?
plane,
Hey, Dorsey, you want to hear this
huh?
percentage? They said 88% of black men make six figures are married to black women.
Yeah, you know why?
Why is that?
Because they marry their college sweethearts.
Mm.
See, it's a misunderstanding. Look, when a guy when I was going to school, when a guy went to college, he paired up with a girl that was his equal, and they were looking at their earning potential together if they worked together.
Mm.
My mom and dad was bringing in $200,000 a year, not only with their teaching jobs, but with the investments they were making. My mom was investing in real estate, rental houses for single men with jobs.
Mm.
She was renting out rooming houses, boarding houses. My dad had a jukebox business that he inherited from his father.
Mm.
And my uncles all went to college and
All right.
married their
10 more seconds. 10 more
college
seconds.
sweethearts.
10 more seconds, Dorsey. So I
So
need you
when
to
you get
land.
with somebody on your level, and I tell men is stop bending down and picking up trash off the street. Get somebody on your level and use that knowledge and use your tact to convince that woman that you can build something together.
All right. Thank you, Dorsey. I
Shit,
gotta get
sell
it.
them a dream. Shit. All right, so now I'm getting off the plane. I'm sliding down. I done slapped the stewardess on her ass. Told her I'll talk to her later, and I'm gone.
Oh
See,
shit. Shout out to Dorsey. I had to call Dorsey, see how everything is, and tell him that. Hold on 1 second. That I wanted him to talk on this because he knows more about Native Americans than I do, or Black Indigenous. Give me a second. Yeah, he knew about more Black Indigenous than I do, so definitely. I wanted to get his feedback on it. Definitely. Give me 1 second, everybody. All right, cool. All right, we're gonna start the show, everybody. Because we got a lot of stuff to get through. Let's see. Voila. So this first video is called "Exposed." I mean, erased in plain sight. How Native Americans were reclassified as Black freemen. You know. So definitely, I think this is going to be really good. Um, I will be breaking this video down. I won't go through everything today, but we will have another conversation on Monday about this. So yes.
Began in chains. That history starts. We are taught that Black Americans began in chains. That history starts in 1619. That before ships crossed the Atlantic, there was nothing here. But history is not only written in textbooks. It is written in land records, in censuses, in court rulings, and in the quiet changes of a single word written again and again until an entire people disappear on paper. This is not a story about denying slavery. This is a story about what slavery erased.
We were not brought here on slave ships. That's not economically sound.
What do you mean?
The United States was only built 13 colonies at first, right? You think this whole land was empty? No, natives are the melanated African being that has come here since the beginning of the Mali Empire. We're talking about 14, 13.
And that's was it Hotop. I think that's his name. Hotop. He's just, it's very difficult to explain him. What he's saying right now is, do you believe that there were the natives were the North Americans of Africans? You know, they were the originators of America, North America. They were probably calling things differently, creating things differently, but they already ruled the Western Hemisphere. You know, a lot of these black Americans didn't come off a slave ship. You know, this is why a lot of black Americans get offended when you call them African American, because they don't know what part of Africa they're from. And then African is a white man's name anyways. You know, everybody want to be super black and stuff and pro black. The word Africa was created by a white man.
Century, we had already come here from Africa.
Really?
Because before reclassification, before racial laws, before categories hardened, black people were already here. The official story is simple. Africans were brought here as enslaved people. They had no land, no prior claim, no connection to the soil beneath their feet. But simplicity is not true.
So when Christopher Columbus got here, Christopher Columbus got to the Caribbean, according to the primary source.
Right.
They basically said the first thing he did was take slaves. He didn't bring slaves, he took slaves from the island. He captured people.
Early American records do not describe a population arriving all at once, uniformly enslaved. Instead, they describe a complex society, free and enslaved, landholding and dispossessed long before the United States existed.
My entire tribe of my ancestors from Virginia, the Nanzatigo, were redesignated as mulatto and sent as slaves to Antigua. You know, so this is the things that they were doing. They were erasing our history.
So the question is not whether Africans were enslaved. The question is, who was already here when the system of race was invented? Long before European colonization, the Atlantic was not a barrier, it was a corridor. Archaeological evidence shows African presence in the Americas centuries before Columbus. Olmec colossal heads bear unmistakable African features. Carbon-dated artifacts place African contact as early as 900 AD.
The Olmecs and Washita, Black Californians, Jamasi, Califunami, and other pre-Columbian blacks of the Americas were part of the prehistoric trade network that began in Africa and spread worldwide over 100,000 years ago.
This does not mean millions migrated.
AI from a refugee trying to change the narrative about the bones in this dirt. Yeah, they do. And the reason why is because don't forget as Dorsey told us, the red natives sold us out. You know, they sold us out already. So if you're gonna sell us out, you might as well just try to erase and classify us as African slaves. You know, and I'm gonna say this. Within a matter of 300 years, we look different. We look different now. What is that, like 4 or 5 generations? We look different now? That's telling you something. It's telling us something. We have no facial structure as Africans. We don't have we have a different skin color, different skin complex. As I told you, in the summer times, if I'm out there in the sun, I turn burgundy. I don't burn. A lot of these people who are in the sun from Africa, they burn, you know? So that's telling us something. That's not 4 or 5 just generations. That's fucking 10 to 20 years of generational admixtures. Why do I gotta know different from an African? Why do I have a different nose? Why do I have a different nose from a white man? And even a red native. My nose is a little bit different than theirs.
It means contact occurred and contact leaves descendants. History does not require mass movement to establish presence. It requires continuity. By the early 1500s, Africans are documented in America,
born American.
not
born
as cargo,
enemy.
but as explorers, soldiers, and settlers. Estevanico, an African man, explored what is now Arizona and New Mexico in 1528, nearly a century before Jamestown.
In Mexico, one of the most ancient civilizations in the Americas, the Black Olmecs developed a calendar that goes back to about 3,113 years before Christ. In fact, they are the first civilization in Mexico, and it was from them that all other civilizations in Mesoamerica followed.
Spanish and French records list free Moors, Negroes and mulattoes, living among indigenous populations, owning land, marrying locally, and raising families. These people were not slaves. They were locals. In early America, race was not fixed. Status mattered more than skin. Free black families owned land in Virginia, the Carolinas, Florida, Louisiana, and the Mississippi Valley. Some fought in militias. Some paid taxes. Some were classified as Indian, others as free-colored. Their existence contradicts the idea that black Americans began without roots. In 1676, Bacon's rebellion changed everything. Poor Europeans and Africans united against
Berkeley
colonial
had been
elites.
the governor over the Virginia colony for many years.
Hold on, what did he say?
And in the 1640s, he had made a deal with area Native American.
Poor Europeans and Africans united against
Berkeley
colonial
had been the
elites.
governor over the Virginia colony for many years. And in the 1640s, he had made a deal with area Native American tribes that gave him a large piece of land, which he basically divvied up among some of his friends. Now enter Nathaniel Bacon. In 1674, he arrived in America and purchased a plantation near Jamestown. Bacon was quickly put on Governor Berkeley's council, but very soon they began to butt heads because Berkeley and him disagreed over the treatment of Native Americans. Nathaniel Bacon argued for moving further west and taking Native American land, while Berkeley abided by the deal he had made with Native Americans years before. Bacon began to gain more followers. Many of the former indentured servants who were getting out of their contracts and had no land of their own became supporters of Bacon and his plan to get more land pushing to the west in Virginia. Some colonists began to attempt to settle into this western frontier of Virginia, and they ended up being attacked by Native Americans. And that was all it took for Bacon and his followers to start the rebellion. Bacon organized about 60 colonists, and they began conducting their own raids of Native American villages, killing men, women, and children. Bacon and about 500 followers marched on Jamestown and demanded that Bacon be given permission to attack Native Americans. Bacon and Berkeley openly argued in the streets of Jamestown. Governor Berkeley organized his own militia to put down the rebellion. So Bacon and Berkeley's forces began to clash, and on September 19, 1676, Bacon and his militia marched on Jamestown, burning it to the ground.
Unity threatened power. The solution was racial division. Laws were passed redefining who could own land, testify in court, or inherit property. Racial categories hardened. White gained privileges. Negro lost rights. Race was no longer description. It became policy.
After the Civil War, the tribal nations abolished slavery as part of treaties signed with the federal government in 1866. Former slaves would be fully integrated and now known as freedmen.
We know that America Cohee was born in 1888. She is an original enrollee of the Muskogee Creek Nation.
Rhonda Grayson's great-grandmother lived her whole life as a member of the Muskogee Creek tribe. In 1979, the Creek passed new laws decreeing that freedmen were no longer tribal members. The other tribes followed. Freedmen would lose their tribal voting rights as well as their housing, health, and other benefits.
That's why I said, why haven't the Red Natives said anything? All they did was kick them out. They had a vote. And I'm gonna say this: I think they're a part of the white supremacy as well. And this is just my theory. You know, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but this is what I do believe. I do believe that a lot of those red natives are against the black natives. For what reason, I don't know. I don't want to think that. I would tell you that. I don't want to think that, but I have to.
Everyone should be outraged that this could happen in 1979.
Reclassification did not happen overnight. It happened line by line. Families recorded as Indian in one census appear as colored in the next and Negro after that. Same land, same surnames, different identity. Once reclassified as Negro, treaty protections vanished, land ownership was challenged, inheritance denied. This was not accidental. It was administrative erasure.
And you see this person identified, this is the 1925 New York State Census, as black. We have a federal census, and this individual is Modoc, and it's Ernest Modoc, and it's the Modoc Indians. And you see this individual is classified on the other side, on the right-hand side there, racially as Negro. At the surname Homa, We looked at the dispersion of the surname Homo, and you see this person is classified racially as black. Here you have another individual for the 1910 U.S. Census coming out of Louisiana. Again, you have this entire family. Even though they maintain the Houma tribal name, they have been classified as black.
When Native American land became valuable, blackness became disqualified. During the Dawes Roe era, black identifying indigenous people were excluded from tribal recognition. Freedmen, descendants of native nations, were stripped of citizenship and land. Their crime was not ancestry, it was classification. Too native to be Negro, too black to be Indian. Across America, communities survived in the margins, the Melungeons, the Lumbee, the Gullah Geechee, the Redbones, and the Seminole Freedmen. These groups shared one trait: they existed outside rigid racial lines. And when land became profitable, those lines were redrawn. DNA does not tell stories, but it reveals contradiction. Many black Americans carry indigenous ancestry not explained by recent history.
I think that's very smart. I think that's actually very true. DNA confirms contradiction. You could say a person is from Africa, but once you start seeing native people in branches of your family tree, where is these Africans that the DNA has said? Is this from thousands of years ago? Is this from 200 years ago? Is this from 300 years ago? 400? When? This is why Dr. Umar can't answer those questions. This is why he always have to say, "Oh, what part of the natives you're from?" Then once you start asking him question, "What part of Africa you're from?" He said, "I'm from like 3 or 4 different places." How do you know? How do you know? First, you tell me don't trust the white man. So he don't forget the white man created the 23andMe. We could say, "Oh, white man this, white man that." No, the thing about this is where I say, with the white man, you got to prove that they're wrong. What they're doing or saying is wrong. But there are white people that are right about certain things. This is why you have to do your own research. This is why you have to do your own observation. Because you just can't count anybody out. And I always say that. I say you just can't count anybody out because of the skin, the color of their skin. You got to be like, okay, you know what? Where he's trying to go. We already know Walter Plecker and that was it. Dawes Rose Law. I forgot the dude's name. But the Dawes Rose Law it's about how you look in your skin color. That's what they used to tell you. That's your race now. Let's get into the next video. This is almost over. So we got a few things to get into. Yeah.
Empire. Also, the people being recognized as Black Indians. Check it out. So you from Louisiana, huh? Georgia, Texas, the Carolinas? Let me wake you up. These 50 states you see today, they're recent, created by conquest, not origin. Before the U.S. flag ever touched this land, this was already divided into empires, nations, and tribal territories, thousands of them. And if you were born in one of these states, you might actually be standing on the bones of your own kingdom. Louisiana, you may descend from the Washita de Dugdamundia Empire. Also, the Tunica, Houma, Choctaw, and Yamasee. This was royal land, straight-up empire. Stolen during the Louisiana Purchase. Georgia, you're likely Yamasee, Creek, Muskogee, Oglala. These were sovereign nations, not tribes before the Trail of Tears and Indian removal. Florida, you're looking at Seminole, which included Black Maroons and Yamasee. Also Calusa, Appalachia, and Miccosukee. Many had African and indigenous roots. Don't let them lie to you. Mississippi, Alabama, home of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Natchez, and the Mound Builders. That's sacred. Home of the Choctaw, Chickasaw roots. Don't let them lie to you. Mississippi, Alabama, home of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Natchez, and the Mound Builders. That's sacred ground. You ain't just Southern, you're indigenous royalty. Texas, you might be Caddo, Tawakoni, Karankawa, or part of the Washita Imperial Stretch. Also, some Black Seminoles and Comancheros escaped here.
That's Florida.
South of North Carolina. You're likely Cherokee, Catawba, Yamasee, or Saponi. Many of them were reclassified as freedmen or colored, but they were nations. New York, you could be Lenape, Iroquois, or Mohawk, the original lawgivers of Turtle Island. Some early Moors merged with these nations during colonial resistance. California, the so-called Black Indians of Cali were Tongva, Chumash, and Washoe. They don't teach that the West Coast had melanated tribes, so no, you're not just Black. You're not just African American. You're indigenous to the land. You're royalty from the soil. But they reclassified you, called you freedmen, colored Negro, just so they could steal your inheritance. Want to know where you're from? Don't just look at Africa. Look at the land you stand on. That's your root. That's your tribe. That's your empire. Let me be clear. This video is not about gun violence. This is about protecting your legacy, your lineage, and your lawful rights. My name is Erica. I'm an indigenous woman to this land. I represent the Nativa Party, a movement dedicated to truth, sovereignty, and rebuilding what was stolen from our people.
And for the Cherokee people who are trying to include us as Indians now,
I'm gonna say this, everyone. If the Red Natives kick us out the nation, I think we need to create a new nation, Freedmen Creeks or Freedmen Cherokee, and be 3 times better than them because a black man had the formula for Jack. Yeah, always. I'm not surprised, Dorsey. I'm not surprised. You know, yeah, I'm not surprised about that. Um, but I think I'm gonna be personally honest. I think we need to start our own nation, our own black. I mean, we could call it Freeman Cherokee, Freeman Creek, Freeman Choctaw. Because don't forget, in the early 2000s, they excluded Black Americans or freedmen out of the nation, so we couldn't reap no benefits. You know, and I feel like this: if it's gonna be that way, we should fight for our own benefits now. And we gotta make. But the thing about it, after reparations, I think that's when we can do it. Other than that, I don't think we can do it right now because it'll just be too much stuff that we'll be fighting for. I think we need to fight for one thing right now, take care of it. I think reparations should be the first. It should be the first. Oh, sorry.
we good. We good. That's the thing about all of them.
See, look at.
They only want to try to include us. They only people who are trying to include
my name is people
as Indians.
And truth, sovereignty, and rebuilding what was stolen from our people.
And for the Cherokee people who are trying to include us as Indians now, we good.
Mm-hmm.
We good.
Yep. I just said that.
That's the thing about all of them. They only want to try to include us. They only want to try to jump on the bandwagon when they know that they ass is in trouble. Now that the truth is coming out and everything else, now y'all want to try to hurry up and include us because y'all realize y'all losing everything, huh? Y'all realize that little contract that y'all, they only want to sign has now ran its course.
Mm-hmm.
Now y'all want to include us, that way it save your ass. No, we not saving nobody's ass. If you're not a copper person, we're not saving your ass. We give a fuck how anybody feel. Y'all can say whatever the fuck you want to say about me. If you ain't my people, I don't give a fuck. What happened, how happened, what's going on with you, what you losing, how you losing it, I don't give a fuck about none of it. I don't feel sorry. I don't feel bad. I don't feel none of it. But nah, we good, though. We good. We don't want no parts.
Yep.
No. Because when we finally start doing this, y'all ass out the door too. Yeah. Y'all can go find somebody else to play with. Because we not it. We tried to be kosher with y'all motherfuckers for way too goddamn long. We tried to be cool, calm, collected with y'all for way too motherfucking long. Now everybody want to try. No. No. Y'all keep that same energy y'all had in the beginning. Go over there with your best friend, the white man, because we cool. We good. Thank you.
So, it's about time y'all know the truth. And y'all already know. I'm gonna give it to you. See, if y'all actually go do y'all research and study deep into those history books, you will realize there was Afro-Indigenous people on this American land. And after a while, there was a people called Siberians. You can go look them up right now. They're Euro-Asians. They crossed over the Bering Bridge. You can go look that up. They came over and they was greeted and welcomed by an Afro race, a black race. This black race greeted and welcomed them, and they also allowed them to live amongst them. And they lived in peace together. Some of them even started having children. That black race that was here on the American soil, they allowed these Siberian Asians to come over. They greeted, welcomed them, and let them in with open arms. They was living at peace. But then, down the line, that's when the Spaniards came over. Christopher Columbus, all them, he was Spaniard. All right, now stay with me, because you know how they teach y'all in school that Christopher Columbus, the one that was here first? Mind you, at this very moment, I'm telling y'all, it's just the Afro-Indigenous people that was there first, and then they greeted the Siberian Asians over there. So now the Spaniards finna come, Christopher Columbus. These Siberian Asian people that the Afro-Indigenous people allowed to come over there and welcome them.
I think we got to be careful with that, because not be careful, but I think we need to actually take that into recognition, because I said there were Siberians that were in America after the black natives. And this is why I said the intermarrying I think was great, but I think it's very important. Let me see. By by her people, does she mean mixed people? Siberians? No, Siberians are like Mongol. I think like Mongols, the Mongols. Maybe it might be a mixed race of Mongols, but they were like Mongolian. Yes. You know, and this, St. Michael's, there's nothing wrong with that. You making it seem like it was a bad thing, to be a mixture of something. Don't forget, Genghis Khan, at least 30% of Asian people have Mongolian blood because of Genghis Khan, so uh, don't forget that,
With peace and open arms, tell me why they decided to gang up with the Spaniards and to enslave the Afro-Indigenous people that allowed them to be on this land.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the Siberian and the Spaniards betrayed the people who welcomed them even on this land. Those Siberian Asians and them Spaniards betrayed those black people that was here already on this land, and they began to enslave them. So these Siberian Asians and these Spaniards started having kids and basically conjoined together. They became one. So now these Siberian Asians and Spaniards is having kids together. The Spaniards started enslaving these Afro-Indigenous people that was here, and the Siberian Asians helped them. And some of those Siberian Asians even became bounty hunters.
That might have answered the question about why aren't they telling the full truth of the real start of America or North America, and like I said, a lot of those people turned on the Afro-Indigenous. There's a reason. This is the thing. Once you find out it's the truth, you got to figure out why now. Like, why did this happen? Why are they lying? Why do they feel like they can't tell this story? Is it embarrassing? Is it, bad history, their dark side of their history? Everybody has a dark side of their history.
For the Spaniards, whenever their slave ended up getting loose or trying to run away. So some of these Siberian Asians became bounty hunters for the Spaniards for when their slave escaped. And that's where you get the scalping of the head from. Now, I know y'all heard of the scalping of the head, bruh. I know y'all heard of it. See, the Spaniards was telling the Siberian Asians to go hunt them once they escape. If you can bring them back alive, then do that. But if you couldn't, if you killed that slave, you had to bring a Spaniard back something of that slave to show that you did what you supposed to have done. So they would cut off the scalp every time they caught one of the slaves escaping and bring their scalp back to the Spaniard to show them that they caught the slave. And that's when the Siberian Asians was betrayed by the same people they helped. So that same knife that the Siberian Asians used to stab those Afro-Indigenous people of this land in the back with, those Spaniards took it right out of their back and stabbed those Siberian Asians in the back. And that's where you get the Trail of Tears. That's when you get the Trail of Tears. Let's put the truth out there for real. Let's put the truth out there for real. And that's where you get the Trail of Tears. Basically telling those Indians that they couldn't stay on the land as well. And even with that, they was still giving a deal. Basically, we'll give y'all your own reservations. Y'all still get some land out of it. Because at the end of the day, y'all helped us take over this land. So we're going to give y'all a deal also. We'll give y'all reservations, reparations. We'll make sure y'all straight. But this our land. On reservations. That's how the Europeans did them Indians after they stabbed those Afro-Indigenous people in the back. And when I say Indians, Native Indians, because that was part of the deal. That's what y'all gonna be called. We still gonna give y'all reparations, y'all reservations, and we gonna give y'all the name of Native. This whole Afro-Indigenous people got stabbed in the back. Then Siberian Asians were stabbed in the back, given the name Native Indians. And now the Europeans taking over, and now their history is that, hey, they found this land. And there was a great deal given. They got their own reservations. They got reparations they getting. All this different money. Shoot. They the ones that mainly own all the casinos. The Native Indians. Siberian Asians. Mixed with some European, Spaniard, probably some other Afro-Indigenous people.
Facts.
And not only that, even when they gave them that deal, they even gave them the deal for them to take even some of the slaves and take them on their land. So they even allowed them to have their own slaves. Yeah. So some of the black people, some of the Afro-Indigenous people was over there on their reservations.
Yep.
They had slaves, the Native Indians. So this Trail of Tears, it probably was them crying. Because they was betrayed by the people that they was helping to betray the Afro-Indigenous people here. So yeah, they was crying because they were betrayed. The craziest part is that even when the Civil War and all that started happening, and
let's go on.
One thing about it, man. Once the truth started coming out, then everybody got to start telling the truth. It's a karmic thing. You gotta tell the truth once the truth come out. They like, oh, they woke. We need them on our side, cause now they know the truth. It's up. But hold on real quick. Let me show y'all what I'm talking about. Alright, here we go right here. Cherokee tribes and the inclusion of black Indians. Freedmen. That's my mom's maiden name. Freeman. The Cherokee Nation has acknowledged and affirmed the right of the descendants of black people once enslaved by the tribe, known as the Cherokee Freemen. So you telling me Native Americans enslaved black people? But y'all be all on our posts making racist remarks telling us that we ain't Indian and telling us that we from Africa. But your Cherokee Nation has acknowledged and affirmed the right of the descendants of black once enslaved by your tribe. So you telling me y'all enslaved indigenous people? So you telling me these Native Americans that look like Siberians, look like white folks, look like Mexicans, look like Hispanics. So you telling me them same people enslaved black tribe, black people. You see what I'm saying? So y'all enslaved indigenous black people and got the nerve to come on our pages being disrespectful. I'm finna put all this business out here. Everybody need to know this. Y'all make sure y'all share, comment, goddamn like this shit. Show your mama, show your grandma. The Cherokee Nation has acknowledged and affirmed the right of the descendants of black people once enslaved by the tribe. They're not talking about Africans. They wouldn't say Africans. They said black people. And they don't want to say black Indians because that's who we are. Inclusion of black Indians.
Yeah, see?
So they didn't want to say down here that they enslaved black Indians. These Siberian, Mongolian, they worked as slave catchers. They enslaved black.
Remember I told you that St. Michael's, I said they were like Mongolians, Serbians. They were here with black Americans. Well, black people. You know, I think most of these black people were Moors, if you ask me. I will say that.
Black indigenous people with those same white people. Y'all need to know what's going on. So stop saying that these Cherokee white Mongolian people are the true Indians. No, the black Indians are. Now let's go to this. Now this why I fuck with my uncle Deontay Trump. Cause he know the truth. He know what's going on. And I've been trying to tell y'all that for the longest, all my black people, but y'all so caught up in this racist stuff of what white people did to us that you think all white people are against us. Did y'all know that it was some white people helped us during slavery? But that's another story. This what my boy Trump doing.
Oh, he's caping.
Native communities could lose $24.5 billion under Trump administration proposal. If upheld by the courts, the proposed freeze on federal grants would affect nearly every tribe. Nah, this ain't old news. What it is, July the 24th or something like that. They published this July the 15th. This new news. Yeah. So all y'all hating Native American tribes that don't know nothing, because that's all y'all do in court. You say, I don't know nothing. Y'all don't know nothing truly. Because black indigenous people been trying to tell y'all who we are, and all y'all did was come through with racist remarks. But guess what? Thank you, Uncle Trump. Hit they ass. $24.5 billion. And guess what? It's going to affect nearly every tribe. So no, we cool. We don't need y'all to include us. We already included. Everybody know who we is. Keep that same energy. We good.
The Muskogee Nation Supreme Court has ruled that the descendants of people once enslaved by the tribe are indeed entitled to tribal citizenship. Rhonda Grayson and Jeffrey Kennedy have been trying to obtain citizenship in the Muskogee Nation since 2019, but they were denied because they could not identify a lineal descendant. To offer some context, the Muskogee Nation is a part of the Five Civilized Tribes. That was the name given to the Native American tribes who, amongst other things, participated in chattel slavery. The Five Civilized Tribes fought on the side of the Confederacy during the Civil War. Once the South lost the war, the Muskogee Nation entered into a new treaty with the United States in 1866. In that treaty, the Muskogee Nation agreed that their former slaves, now known as Creek Freedmen, would be granted tribal membership into the Muskogee Nation. More than 100 years later, in 1979, the Muskogee Nation reversed course and stated that it would no longer grant Creek Freedmen membership into the tribe unless 1, they were Muskogee by blood, or they were listed in the Dawes Rolls. There have been several issues with the Muskogee Nation taking that position, the biggest of which the Dawes Rolls were established after the Treaty of 1866. Another issue is that the Dawes Rolls have long been exposed as having some serious flaws. So after years of litigation, the Muskogee Nation Supreme Court agreed that it should honor the Treaty of 1866. Brenda Grayson and Jeffrey Kennedy said that they hope that this begins a path of healing and reconciliation. And it is also predicted that this will now open up the door for thousands of Black Americans to be able to apply for tribal citizenship.
So it looks like some changes are being made, okay? Number one, I'm not indigenous, okay? I'm not of the indigenous tribes. I do not belong to any indigenous tribe, never has, not my family, okay? And but I do understand and know that historically the indigenous did not go by blood quantum, meaning that you did not have to be by blood to be a part of their nations, such as Cherokee or Creek. You didn't have to all the tribes, they didn't go by blood quantum back then. They adopted people into their tribes, and sometimes this was after enslavement of some, which called the Freedmen. Okay, they were given land. They were given all the rights of the indigenous tribes that they were around. Okay, I'm just saying that in short. Okay, just really in short, just skipping over everything. Okay, but right now, as you can see, they're striking out the blood quantum. Yeah, so they're striking out the blood quantum and restoring Black back into the tribe. They're giving their citizenship back, all the freedmen, because the blood quantum law was illegal from its inception, okay? Because they know for a fact, because see, the Europeans brought in that blood quantum thing. The Europeans did. And the indigenous just did it. They went along with it, basically barring their quote unquote their brethren out of the tribe just because they were of African descent, right? But you can't do that. That would have been something that their forefathers did not do. They did not do. Once you were whatever you were, that's what you were. Once you were Seminole, you were Seminole. Once you were Cherokee, you were Cherokee. Okay, and you didn't have to have blood running through your veins. Okay. All of a sudden. And see, this is what needs to happen. They need to stop all that bull crap and give them back their citizenship into the tribes. Now, when I tell y'all back in the day, they took land and everything from Black indigenous, they took everything from the Black indigenous. When I tell you everything, land and all, okay? Because they had land and everything. And there was a whole, it got so bad until the Black indigenous had people at gunpoint because that's how bad it got, okay? So, and they had a right to, because they've been living on that land and that was their land. That was literally their land now. They can get citizenship back. Now, they get citizenship, but I'm not sure if they're going to get the land and stuff they had to fight for back. I'm not sure, because I think the land, when it comes to the indigenous and all that, that's tied up in a whole bunch of stuff, okay? With all the indigenous. That's a whole big mess right there, but yeah, I'm glad for them. Yeah. They got their tribal citizenship back.
Wanna know something funny? The modern day Cherokee Nation wants to sue America for not recognizing indigenous, black-skinned Cherokee Indians for all these years. As if we needed their recognition. They were right there with them when they were giving them reparations every single fucking month.
Everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment in the live chat. And also, don't forget to share as well. Share to 5 platform or 5 people. Just share to 5 different things. And also, if you want to help the platform, definitely you can cash at me or you can donate to my GoFundMe. Either or is good. Thank you.
They treated us poorly. It's too late. It is time.
A lot of people like to think that all of this was French. They give everything to the French, everything to the Europeans. The Empire of Haiti is older than France, older than the French. France is new. You know people older than fucking France. The names of the tribe, Choctaw, Gullah Geechee, Cherokee, these are Creole words. These are Creole names. You can find out what these words mean exactly when you research their Creole meaning. Creole predates French. France, I think it's from the 40s, maybe the 50s. You're saying
I didn't know that, everybody.
that Europe is the motherland. Even in Pan-Africanism, they could never. In fact, a lot of what people think is French, even my name from the last video, that's most likely Haitian. But I'll say French because that's what the people like to think the history is. But the real conspiracy here is the Empire of Haiti, how big it spanned, how many different countries and nations were under this, and the language and how much older it is than the places that we think are the old world today. And before there was black Indians. Once again, we predate all of that. And Indian comes from way back when the maps were so different, there was 3 Indias. And America was India Superior. There go. We were Indians. Because what? What was it? Who didn't exist? The Indians that we know as Indians today. I mean, they existed, but they were known as Hindus because they were in the nation of Hindustan. And before that, it was like Bharat or something. They're the most recent people to ever be called an Indian. Any history that was...
He was fucking Italian. All these damn...
You may be descended from them, but...
All these people in here, Indians, they look like you. Native Americans. I mean, look at White Wolf up there. Long hair, black hair. Oh, he's indigenous. Oh, man, look at all these damn Native Americans, boy.
Oh, my God.
Do you not know Iron Eyes Cody? He was an Italian man, played Indian in a lot of movies, and he said he was 100% Indian till the day he died. And he was fucking Italian.
My God.
Take it up with your own ancestors.
For far too long, the mainstream narrative around Black Americans has been one-dimensional. Across the globe, every ethnic group, from the Irish to the Chinese to the Aztecs, has a recognized origin story. People study and celebrate where they came from.
Right.
But when it comes to Black Americans...
Hey, let's get into the next one.
Became the first director of the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Prior to that, there were no birth certificates, and he was a director up until the 1940s, 1946, until his death. But he was part of the eugenics movement, which was a movement about creating one race of people, which was white, and everything else was put in a pot, as Tina Marie would say, and stir it up and call colored. But he went beyond board on that, wherein as far as first Americans are concerned, he changed birth certificates and marriage license. He even put out letters to census takers in 1930 that people such as myself that are first Americans and Native Americans, that he considered us as being bastards, that we were just trying to be Indian to marry into the white race.
Something is wrong with the history we have been told. In old family Bibles, crumbling census records, and whispers passed down through generations of Black families, there are hints of a hidden story. Faces in antique photographs labeled Indian have skin as dark as any African. An ancestor who was Cherokee on one document later turns up as Black on another. It's enough to make one wonder. Did some of America's indigenous peoples have black identity, but were later reclassified as Indian? Were some Native Americans, perhaps the very ancestors of today's African Americans, deliberately recategorized as Indians through laws and bureaucracy, their true identity obscured? This controversial theory turns American history on its head and raises serious questions about identity, ancestry, and the power of paper to redefine who people are. The idea sounds shocking, that many so-called Black Americans might actually be descendants of Native Americans, the original inhabitants of this land, whose heritage was wiped away on paper. It's a claim that challenges everything we learned in school about Indians and slaves. So is it possible that a vast swath of indigenous people were actually Black, but they were declared American Indians, erasing their Black identity? In this video, let's investigate the historical trail of this theory.
The Black History Archives.
The question of whether a vast swath of indigenous people in the Americas were actually Black, later declared American Indians, in a way that erased their Black identity, forces us to rethink how race itself was constructed in the modern world. This is not a question that can be answered by pointing to a single document or genetic study. It is a question about process, about how categories were created, enforced, and retroactively naturalized. To explore this possibility honestly, we must step back from modern racial assumptions and return to the moment when Europeans first encountered the peoples of the Americas, before race hardened into the forms we recognize today. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they did not encounter a neatly defined Native American race. They encountered hundreds of distinct nations with different languages, cultures, and appearances. Crucially, early European descriptions repeatedly emphasized skin color diversity among indigenous peoples. Spanish, Portuguese, French, and English observers often described indigenous populations as dark, brown, or even Black. These descriptions were not metaphorical. In early modern Europe, words like Black or swarthy were not yet rigid racial categories. They were descriptive terms tied primarily to complexion. At this point in history, Blackness had not been fully racialized as a global biological identity confined to Africa. It was still a flexible descriptor of appearance. This matters because the Europeans who encountered indigenous peoples did not yet possess a stable conceptual framework for understanding Black people who were not African. That conceptual gap created a problem. If Black...
I want to throw this out here. Are there some white Native Americans? Yes. Yes. Some might be $5 Indians. Some might actually have lineage and culture and bloodlines of Native Americans. Absolutely. I actually knowed one. I actually know one. It's just we're not gonna do the Puerto Rican thing and say like everybody's fucking Taino. We know the Spaniards killed off the Tainos. You know, are there still some left? Yeah, there's certain tribes that are Tainos, but they look like me, or even darker than me. You know, so we're not gonna sit here and like we're not gonna sit here and act like every white man who said that they're Native American is Native American. We just seen White Wolf over here bugging the fuck out, but yeah.
Were acknowledged as naturally present in the Americas, it would undermine emerging European ideas about geography, civilization, and hierarchy. It would also complicate the developing justification for African slavery, which depended on the notion that Blackness was foreign, external, and transportable. Rather than confront this contradiction, Europeans resolved it through naming. They created the category Indian. The term Indian was never an indigenous identity. It was an administrative invention, born of Columbus's geographical error, and preserved because it was useful. Once Europeans realized they were not in India, they could have abandoned the term. Instead, they retained it and expanded its meaning. Indian became a racial container, a label capable of absorbing all indigenous peoples, regardless of their actual appearance. Light-skinned, dark-skinned, straight-haired, tightly curled, none of this mattered once the category existed. What mattered was that Indian separated indigenous peoples from Africans, even when their physical traits overlapped. This separation was not symbolic. It was structural. As plantation slavery expanded across the Americas, European societies increasingly defined blackness as a permanent, inheritable condition tied specifically to African origin. For slavery to function as a racial system rather than a temporary labor arrangement, blackness had to be monopolized. It had to belong only to Africa. If blackness existed indigenously in the Americas, then black people could not be framed solely as imported labor. They would also be native peoples with claims to land, belonging, and historical presence. That possibility was intolerable to settler colonial logic. Here's a reminder to please support us so we can make more videos for you by subscribing to our channel and giving the video a like. We want to build a strong community and we need your support. Let's continue now. This is where the erasure of indigenous blackness becomes not only possible, but likely. Indigenous peoples who were dark-skinned posed a conceptual threat. Acknowledging them as black would collapse the carefully constructed distinction between indigenous removal and African enslavement. The solution was not to deny their existence, but to rename them. By assigning all indigenous peoples to the category Indian, European powers effectively stripped blackness from indigenous identity. Over time, this renaming hardened into racial doctrine. Indian ceased to be a geographic mistake and became a racial identity that explicitly excluded blackness. Yet, paintings from that era show Native Americans as black. As racial ideology developed in the 18th and 19th centuries, this process intensified. Racial science emerged, dividing humanity into artificial color-coded groups: white, black, red, and yellow. Indigenous peoples were assigned to the red race, even though many were brown or dark-skinned and had never identified themselves by color at all. This was not an empirical discovery. It was a retroactive reclassification designed to stabilize racial hierarchy. Dark-skinned indigenous people did not disappear biologically. Their blackness disappeared conceptually. The shift is visible in historical records. Early colonial texts describe indigenous people as dark and sometimes explicitly black. Later texts, written after racial categories hardened, suddenly portrays indigenous peoples as uniformly red, distinct from black Africans. Art, illustrations, and museum displays follow the same pattern. Early depictions show wide variation in skin tone. Later depictions standardize a narrow image of the Indian that excludes blackness. This is not evidence of physical transformation. It is evidence of ideological editing. Law then cemented what language and imagery had begun. As colonial societies evolved into nation states, legal systems required clear racial boundaries. These boundaries governed who could own land, who could be enslaved, who could vote, and who could be removed. Blackness became legally associated with enslavement and social death. Indigeneity became associated with treaties and territorial claims. For the system to function smoothly, these categories had to remain separate. Indigenous peoples could not be black because blackness had been legally engineered as incompatible with sovereignty. This logic explains why, over time, indigenous recognition became conditional on the absence of blackness. Dark-skinned indigenous people faced increasing pressure to accept the Indian label stripped of black identity or risk losing recognition altogether. In some cases, indigenous communities were told explicitly that they were no longer real Indians if they were perceived as too dark. In others, the erasure was quieter, achieved through censuses, birth records, and legal classifications that simply stopped recording blackness as compatible with indigeneity. Census practices played a particularly powerful role in this process. Early censuses were inconsistent, often relying on the judgment of local enumerators. As racial categories became more rigid, enumerators increasingly relied on appearance. Dark skin meant black, but blackness now meant African. This created a dilemma. If dark-skinned indigenous people were recorded as black, they lost their indigenous status. If they were recorded as Indian, their blackness vanished from the historical record. Over generations, this produced a distorted archive in which indigenous blackness effectively ceased to exist as a recognized category. Anthropology later complicated the picture without fully resolving
I think that will
Early
complicate a lot of stuff,
anthropological
Dorsey,
finds,
because there's more
including
than 12
ancient
tribes.
skeletal remains in the Americas, suggested a wider range of physical variation than the later red race model allowed. Some remains were initially described as having features associated with Africans or other dark-skinned populations. Later genetic research showed that these populations ultimately descended from ancient migrations through Asia. But this does not negate the argument. Genetics does not determine race. Race is a social system imposed on bodies, not a direct reflection of DNA. A population can be genetically closer to East Asians and still be socially understood as black in a pre-modern context. Even today, people of South Asian, Melanesian, or Aboriginal Australian descent are often racialized as black in Western societies, despite distinct genetic histories. What matters here is not ancient migration routes, but how bodies were read and classified at the moment Europeans encountered them. And many indigenous bodies were read as black before racial science rewrote their perception. This is why the idea continues to resonate, particularly among black communities. It is not primarily about rejecting African ancestry. It is about restoring a dimension of history that was systematically erased. For centuries, black presence in the Americas has been narrated almost exclusively through slavery. Indigeneity has been narrated as separate. The possibility that blackness existed indigenously challenges both narratives and reveals them as incomplete. This does not mean that all indigenous peoples were black or that African ancestry is irrelevant. It means that blackness was more geographically and historically complex than the racial system allowed, and that the category American.
I think that's a great point. He said it was more geographically more than like bloodline or like race. It was just a geographical thing in North America, North and South America, and even in Central America. You gotta look at it as a geographic thing. I think that needs to be up for a discussion. Was it more of a geographical continent? I mean, was it more of a geographical colony or area, or was it just people were mixing and mingling? Why you think the star is out symbol? I don't know. That's a good question.
Indian functioned, at least in part, to erase indigenous black identity in order to stabilize colonial power. So is it possible that a vast swath of indigenous people were black, later declared American Indians, erasing their black identity? Yes, it is possible. Not as a universal rule, not as a replacement for African history, but as a historically plausible process driven by colonial naming, legal classification, and racial engineering. The evidence does not support a simplistic reversal of identities.
Let's go on to the next one. This one's is a quick, fast Ricky Bobby.
You don't believe that Africans were brought over on slave ships?
Correct. I believe it may have happened, maybe people were brought over as slaves, but I don't think that the black people in America came from Africa on slave ships. I believe the people that were here were slowly conquered. First, they got the East Coast, and then they started spreading out west little by little, conquering. And when you conquer a tribe, what do? You enslave them. They're POWs, right?
Okay.
That's what you do. So after you conquer this tribe, you make them slaves. Now, how do you conquer the natives here? So let's say you got this tribe is warring against this tribe. Well, this tribe goes talk to the white man. White man says, yo, if you help me wipe out these people, then boom, I'll help you with whatever. So they get together and they wipe out this other tribe. Now, guess what? The white man now outnumbers this tribe. So he wipes them out. You just kill two birds with one stone. You just keep moving like that. We were the natives. We were not brought here on slave ships. That's not economically sound. What do you mean? Make sense. So when Christopher Columbus got here, Christopher Columbus got to the Caribbean, according to primary source.
Right.
They basically said the first thing he did was take slaves. He didn't bring slaves. He took slaves from the island. He captured people. So when you have colonization, you got to remember, the United States was only built 13 colonies at first, right? You think this whole land was empty? No, there were natives here.
Right.
But today we're taught that natives is some other people. No, natives are the melanated African being that has come here since the beginning of the Mali Empire. We're talking about 14th, 13th century. We had already come here from Africa.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had already come here.
To the United States or to
this landmass we call the United States. So the way the ocean current works is it works from Africa, leaves out of West Africa, comes to South America and the Caribbean. That's just how the currents go. You don't need no paddle boat or nothing. It'll just, the currents will just take you there, and then you travel up. But we had already been here. All you got to do is look up the story of Sarah Rector. Sarah Rector is a wealthy so-called Native American. I think she was Choctaw tribe or one of these tribes, but she was wealthy. And she wanted a VI pass to go somewhere. And they had her classified as a free person. Why don't we know about the wealthy so-called black people in America? Why don't we know that there were black slave owners in America? Why is that not taught? Why is it not taught?
How many black slave owners were there?
Man, the natives here had slaves. They were trading slaves with the so-called white man.
Well, they definitely did that. Natives enslaved people of other tribes.
Right. So if those people are us, the so-called black man, if those natives were us, then we have to tell that history and say how we did have territories and we did, carry out commerce, and we weren't slaves. We were slave owners.
Right, but the majority of African Americans that lived here were brought over here.
No,
that's
not economically sound.
What do you mean by it's not economically sound? Like there were slave ships, right?
All right, let's say you wanted to have, you wanted to sell marijuana,
right?
Would you import marijuana? Would you grow it here if it's already here?
Well, it depends on whether or not grew here.
Well, can you grow here?
You can, but we're just talking about, like, what if we're talking about something that you can't grow here?
So what I'm saying is, people were already here. Does it make sense to go all the way to this other continent to bring people on the boat when we know that half of your stock is going to die? You wouldn't do that.
So how many people do you think were brought over from Africa on slave ships? Because that definitely happened.
I don't believe it.
What do you mean you don't believe it?
I don't believe that story.
But I'm still confused. There's a great history of slave ships being brought over from Africa with Africans that became slaves and worked in the South. Do you think that's lies?
History is his story.
Right.
What about my story? Is my story not valid?
But if you do 23andMe on someone who is from these parts of the country, you'll find out that
23andMe.
Well, that's real.
So
what is 23andMe?
So when I take a 23andMe test, right?
Yes.
What's it going to tell me about Africa?
That's a good question. We should find out.
It's probably going to say, "Oh, you're from Kenya, or you're from Angola, you're from this, right?"
Right.
These things, these borders, were created by Europe.
In terms, yes,
right.
In terms of like what parts of Africa and how it's distributed and what's a country and what's not a country.
Yeah,
right.
These
by
names,
the Afrikaners and Dutch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't classify me based upon a European name.
I understand that, but they're saying geographically, geographic location, you can call it whatever name you want.
Right.
they can tell you where your genetics originated. Like I've got some weird shit in me. I got like 1% Asian. I don't know why it's there. 1.6% African.
Okay.
There's also weird stuff that you find in your DNA that like your ancestors and ancestors' ancestors. Someone
so let's
was
walk
somewhere.
down that. Let's walk down that path, right? So either way, if you take black people here in America and you do their DNA sample and it point back to Africa, what does that say? It says black people in America are Africans. Now, the argument is, were we brought here or were we already here? Did we bring ourselves here or did the white man bring us here? You see, when you say the white...
That's a question. That's actually a good question I never thought of. Like I never thought. When you say Africa, were we already here or did they bring us here? Oh my God. That's the question that I think, that's crazy. Watch.
Here. Did we bring ourselves here or did the white man bring us here? You see, when you say the white man brought us here, what you're doing is you're removing our ability to transport ourselves. You're saying, oh, we didn't know anything about boats. That's what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to tell me that we didn't know that there was a landmass here. Only the holy white man knew there was land to the west. But when you look at the holy white man, he said, when we got here, we met black people. Go look at the primary source. We got here, we met black people. When we got to the Caribbean, we met black people. You think the Caribbean is right next to America and they weren't in America?
That's interesting.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well,
you go to
it makes sense that you do have people that have traveled, whether it's Polynesians that traveled to Hawaii or people. I mean, there's the Olmecs who were thousands and thousands of years ago in South America. They have clearly African faces.
Yes.
On this, I mean, really, the noses, the lips. I mean, they look African.
Right.
And that was a South American culture that existed, and we don't know anything about them other than the fact that they have these gigantic stone sculptures that have African faces.
I think where Hotop, I think that's his name, Hotop or something like that. He's on point with something. Do I believe everything he said? No. There were 4% of Africans that came to America.
Just ran
That's a
DNA
known
on
fact,
the Cherokee
or
Nation,
truth.
a tribe that told black families their blood was not Indian enough to belong. You tested both sides to prove it. What came back was the opposite of everything anyone expected. African ancestry in the Cherokee members making that claim. Native ancestry in the black families they rejected. Your first instinct is, the data is corrupted. It is not. And what it means for every black family that was told they did not belong. Nobody was prepared for that answer. Here is what it found. It did not arrive as a dramatic announcement. It arrived as a pattern, visible only when researchers compared the DNA of Cherokee Nation members against the DNA of the people the tribe had spent decades trying to exclude. The pattern was not subtle, it was not ambiguous, and it was not what anyone on either side of this dispute had expected to see. The Cherokee freedmen are the descendants of black people who were enslaved by the Cherokee Nation before the Civil War. After the war, the Treaty of 1866 granted them full citizenship in the Cherokee Nation, a legal right in writing signed by the United States government and the Cherokee leadership. For generations, many freedmen families built their lives inside that identity. They spoke the language, they knew the land, they attended Cherokee schools and participated in Cherokee governance. Their children and grandchildren grew up understanding themselves as Cherokee citizens. In 2007, the Cherokee Nation held a referendum and voted to amend its constitution to restrict citizenship to people who could trace their ancestry to individuals listed on the Dawes rolls as Cherokee by blood, excluding those listed as Cherokee freedmen. The vote passed with approximately 76% in favor. Thousands of freedmen and their descendants lost their citizenship in the tribe they had belonged to for generations. Marilyn Vann was one of them, a Cherokee freedmen descendant and president of the Descendants of Freedmen of the Five Civilized Tribes. She had spent years organizing, testifying, and documenting the legal case for restoration of citizenship. When the referendum passed, she described receiving notice that she was no longer a citizen of the nation her family had been part of for generations, not because anything had changed, because a vote had been held, and a document from the 1890s had been used to decide who she was. The legal justification rested on that document. One specific document, created more than 100 years earlier, that sorted people into categories and drew a line between them. And that document, it turns out, was making a determination that had nothing to do with what the DNA would eventually show. Let that land for a second. If this kind of buried history matters to you, subscribe to this channel right now. Every week we go exactly here to talk to them and how they worked. In the 1890s, the United States government undertook a massive census of the 5 civilized tribes: the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole. The goal was to allot tribal lands to individual members, and to do that, the government needed a definitive record of who belonged to each tribe. The census was called the Dawes Rolls, after Henry Dawes, the senator who chaired the committee overseeing the process. The problem was in the method. Picture the scene: a government agent arriving at a community in Indian Territory in the 1890s, a ledger in hand, a deadline to meet, and a mandate to sort every person he encountered into one of 2 columns: Cherokee by blood, Freedmen. He had no DNA test. He had no genealogical database. He had his eyes. A person who looked black went in the Freedmen column. A person who looked Native American went in the Cherokee by blood column. Families who...
This is why I was telling Kwame one day, he was like, when I was talking about the reclassifications of black, natives, mulattoes, colored, I was like, yeah, Walter Plecker started this, and Kwame was Kwame or Shabaka, and they said, one of them said, well, it only happened in Virginia. I said, no, it evolved. It happened in Virginia, but it evolved everywhere down south. And this is just showing the truth that it evolved. It evolved into something. It didn't go by the bloodline. It goes by how you look.
Who had been intermarrying for generations, whose children and grandchildren carried both heritages in their faces and their blood, were sorted by whichever heritage happened to be more visible that day to that agent, in that light. The system was not designed to capture the complex reality of what had actually happened in these communities. It was designed to produce a clean list that could be used for land allotment. For decades, that list functioned as the definitive record of Cherokee identity. It was used in court cases. It was used in legislative debates. It was used, in 2007, to strip thousands of people of their citizenship. The assumption was that the Dawes Rolls, whatever their limitations, at least got the basic categories right. Cherokee blood was Cherokee blood, and freedmen were freedmen, and the two were distinct. Genetics does not care about what the Dawes Rolls said. When DNA analysis was applied to people in both groups, the results created what researchers have described as a classification problem, a situation where the categories the historical record used do not correspond to the biological reality the DNA reveals. Among individuals with documented Cherokee ancestry, the people whose descendants the tribe used to exclude the freedmen, DNA studies have found measurable African ancestry alongside indigenous markers. Not surprising in itself, the Cherokee had enslaved black people for generations, and the genetic record of that contact is visible. DNA Consultants, which has conducted the most extensive published research on Cherokee DNA, found that sub-Saharan African haplogroup L appeared as a meaningful category in their Cherokee sample, a signal of the historical contact and intermarriage that official tribal categories never acknowledged. Among individuals with documented freedmen ancestry, the people whose descendants were stripped of citizenship, researchers have found Native American haplogroups, maternal lineages associated with indigenous populations of the southeastern United States. People the Dawes Rolls classified as not Native American were carrying genetic markers of Native American ancestry because their families had been part of Cherokee communities for generations before the census ever arrived. Multiple researchers examining this data reached the same conclusion. The Dawes Rolls racial classification system was sorting people by appearance rather than ancestry. An appearance, the DNA was showing, was an unreliable guide. The document used to strip thousands of people of their legal identity was sorting people into categories that did not correspond to their actual ancestry. The people classified as lacking Cherokee blood often had it. The people classified as having purely Cherokee blood often did not. The line the Dawes Rolls drew was drawn in the wrong place, because it was drawn by eye, by racial appearance, in the 1890s, by agents operating within the racial logic of their time. To understand why this matters beyond one tribe's membership dispute, you need to understand what the Dawes Rolls represent in the broader history of American racial classification. The Dawes Rolls are one of the most consequential racial classification documents in American history, the basis not only for Cherokee Nation citizenship, but for citizenship in all 5 tribes covered by the original census.
Let me ask y'all a question. Why you think they never talk about this? Why you think this is being hidden? You know, and let me ask you a question. Why don't you find natives in the South? There's a reason why you don't find native Indians in the South, is because this wasn't their territory. I personally believe that this wasn't their territory. You know, so this is why you hear a lot of black people say, "Yeah, I'm Cherokee," because that was a black tribe technically. You know, were there red natives in there? Yes, because it wasn't about bloodline. It was about, I guess, intermarrying. You know, or more of a status.
American courts, tribal governments, and federal agencies have relied on them for over a century to answer the question, who is Native American? And they were created by agents sorting people by eye in the 1890s. The problem is not that the Dawes Rolls got a few cases wrong. The problem is structural. The method was incapable of producing an accurate record of ancestry because it was not designed to measure ancestry. It was designed to measure race as it appeared to government agents in Indian Territory in the 1890s. Every legal decision made on the basis of that document, including the referendum that stripped the freedmen of citizenship, was made on the basis of a classification system that the DNA now shows was categorically unreliable. Here is where the story becomes genuinely strange and genuinely important. The Cherokee Nation's argument for excluding the freedmen was fundamentally a genetic argument, that freedmen lacked Cherokee blood, that their ancestry was African rather than Native American. The DNA evidence does not support that claim, but the picture that emerges is more complex than either side assumed. What the research reveals is that the categories themselves were always artificial. The Cherokee Nation had been absorbing African ancestry for generations before the Civil War. The Cherokee freedmen had been absorbing Cherokee ancestry for generations. By the time the Dawes Rolls were compiled, the biological boundary between these two groups was in many families significantly blurred. The Dawes Rolls did not document this complexity. They erased it. They sorted a population that had been mixing for generations into two clean categories that the DNA shows were never as clean as the document implied. 3 explanations for what produced this result are worth understanding, and they build on each other. The first is administrative. The United States government needed a workable list to distribute land allotments. A nuanced record of mixed ancestry was not administratively useful. Clean categories were. The agents creating the Dawes Rolls were under pressure to finish. Complexity was the enemy of the deadline. The second is deeper and harder. The 1890s were a high point of scientific racism in the United States, not as fringe thinking, but as mainstream legal and scientific consensus. The idea that races were biologically distinct and visually identifiable was taught in universities, applied in courts, and assumed by the government agents compiling the Dawes Rolls. They were not making
I want to say this. This what makes our culture a little bit different towards others.
individual errors. They were applying the consensus of their era. That consensus was wrong, as the DNA now shows, but it was institutionalized into a legal document that has been treated as authoritative for over a century. The third explanation is the most disorienting. Because blackness was visible in ways that indigenous ancestry often was not, because a person with Cherokee and African ancestry might present as black to a government agent in Indian Territory in the 1890s, the Freedmen classification was applied to people who carried substantial Native American ancestry in their DNA. The classification system could not see what it was not designed to look for, and what it could not see, it erased. There is a dimension to this that the DNA analysis alone cannot capture. The freedmen families who fought the 2007 citizenship referendum did not need a geneticist to tell them that they were Cherokee. They knew. They had always known. Marilyn Van has described growing up with a grandmother who spoke of the family's Cherokee history as simply as she spoke of anything else. Not as a claim, not as something to prove, as a fact of who they were. The grandmother had not read the Dawes rolls. She did not know what column her family had been sorted into. She knew what her family knew, that they had been there, on that land, with those people, for as long as anyone could remember. The genetic data is not telling these families something they did not know. It is giving researchers a language to hear what grandmothers like hers have been saying for 100 years. That observation matters beyond the Cherokee freedmen. Across Black America, family stories have been passed down about connections the official record refused to acknowledge. Origins that did not match what the history books said was possible. The science did not discover something these communities did not know. In many cases, it gave researchers a language to hear what was already being said. The Cherokee freedmen who testified before Congress, who filed legal challenges, who fought for decades, were not making a claim based on DNA. They were making a claim based on history and treaty rights. The Treaty of 1806 granted them citizenship regardless of blood quantum. The DNA adds another dimension to an argument that was already legally and historically documented. In 2021, the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court reaffirmed their citizenship rights following a prolonged legal battle. Thousands of freedmen descendants had their citizenship restored. The DNA could not file those lawsuits. But what the DNA does is close one of the remaining arguments for exclusion. The argument that freedmen lacked Native American ancestry. They did not. The Dawes rolls said they did. The Dawes rolls were wrong. So, where does this leave us? The Cherokee freedmen are legally citizens of the Cherokee Nation, as the Treaty of 1866 established, and the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court reaffirmed in 2021. Their ancestry is more complex than the Dawes rolls suggested, including in many cases measurable Native American DNA that the historical
Hey, Convo, I heard you on Dave Anderson show this morning. Shout out to you, man.
classification system failed to record. The DNA does not resolve every question about tribal membership, but it removes one of the central factual premises on which the exclusion was built. The history of the Cherokee freedmen is being rewritten, not only by the DNA, but by the families who preserved their oral history when the official record refused to acknowledge them, by the lawyers who argued their case in federal courts, by Marilyn Van and the descendants who organized for decades.
All right, I'm gonna land right here and I'm gonna say this, everyone. Give me a second. So, he already did. He already spoke. I called them actually. Shout out to everybody and everybody's question, statements, everything. You know, as I always said, I always think the South was a a Black Indian territory. You know, no matter how you put it, yeah, it's a Native American burial ground. You know, and I think if you ever have time, if you can, definitely look back and see where your family is from. You know, I personally do believe a lot of Black Americans are native to America. You know, I think after we get our reparations, that's the next thing we might have to go after is Native Americans. And the reason why, and I wouldn't. They're small fries, and I'm gonna be personally honest. Natives are small fries. I don't even think there are like 3 or 4 million of them left. You know, I'm talking about the Mongolian Native Americans. I don't think there is any of them left. There's very little of them. They're small communities, so I think they're getting beat down by the ancestors. And it's because of their betrayal. Their betrayal is what caused everything. It caught. Hold on a second. Yeah, they're pissed off about that, and I mean, not pissed off, but they're getting beat down because of it. So, what else can we do to them? And that's nothing. I wish I could stay more on this show, but I gotta go pick up my son. So, I might do something later on, or I might go to wrestling today. I don't know, man. I think I want to start Sunday. I mean Saturday. Personally, I think I want to start Saturday just to start off slow. But we'll figure it out because I do got a show to go to. I do want to go to a show Friday, but I don't know. Give me a second. Um, right here. So shout out to Dorsey, Convo, St. Michael's, Lala Brown, Born Enemy, Amini Bay, 1391. I think he's Ethiopian. Shout out to you though. Dorsey again. And I think Robin was on here too. So we did 2 shows within 24 hours. That's shout out to all of us. We got busy out here. Again, I want to thank y'all for being on my show, and I will see you tomorrow with the Crash Out Friday. We will watch all the crash outs that happen all this week, and take care.